The Auto Expo is coming back in January 2023. That's a break of 3 years. And that's because waves of the pandemic have been delaying things, creating all sorts of problems. Now, my last memory of any motor show has been the Auto Expo, the 2020 Auto Expo. And I remember the buzzword at that Auto Expo was China, for some good reasons as well. Because you see a lot of Chinese car makers came in with their wares, showed their upcoming vehicles, talked about their India plans. Some of it materialized, some of it didn't. But somewhere in one corner, one little corner, was a very little exhibit for BYD, or Build Your Dreams. Sure, it didn't have the glitz and the glamour, still doesn't, but BYD has been around in India since 2007, building stuff like forklifts and electric buses, etc. Even their global car sales has been doing extremely well. They've sold 3.1 million vehicles so far, out of which the recent 1 million came in the last 6 months. And they are now the second largest car maker in China, overtaking the traditional IC car makers with a pure electric portfolio. That's saying something. They're second only to Volkswagen SAIC. So can this brand be trusted? Arguable, but I see no harm. Add to it the fact that BYD makes almost everything on the car, right from the large platform that underpins it to the smallest of semiconductors, all the screens inside the car, the body shell, etc. In fact, from the numbers that they've disclosed to us, they even own 16% of all the lithium mines around the world. So they technically control the supply and the cost of the raw material that goes inside those batteries. And those batteries, that is the big deal. That is something that has caught the attention of other car makers as well, including Tesla and Toyota. It's called the Blade battery pack. You see, unlike a regular LFP battery pack, where you have the cells that are put into a rectangular structure or a rectangular module, much like a brick, and then all these modules or bricks are sort of assembled together to make the battery pack, the Blade pack essentially uses cells that are stacked into, say, slim steel boxes that are about that tall and almost as wide as the width of the car. And then all these plates are sort of stacked together into the floor to make that Blade battery pack.
So this essentially eliminates the need of modules, which in turn means lesser material use, some weight saved, and it's also safer.
Now, if you were to research about these batteries, you would often hear the term nail test. What that essentially means is, if a long nail were to be punctured through an LFP battery module, it would release a lot of hot gases and eventually turn into a fire. The battery fires that we all have been hearing about, talking about, etc. Now, what happens with the Blade arrangement is that these cells, if you were to pierce a nail through that, because these cells run cooler, because this arrangement is like, say, a heat sink, the heat dissipation is much quicker, much faster, much better. Also, these cells have a higher starting temperature for an exothermic reaction. Also, they don't release oxygen, so a thermal runaway is literally not possible. So what that means is, the bottom line is that the chances of a battery fire happening with this kind of a setup are next to nil. And that is exactly why this battery pack is such a big deal.
It also saves weight, and since the design creates a sort of a ladder structure, it gives the chassis better rigidity too.
So what that means is that BYD is able to save weight elsewhere in the chassis without really affecting the rigidity of it. What that translates into is that the vehicle feels quite sure-footed when you are making lane changes or taking corners, while at the same time, around tighter switchbacks, it still has a level of agility, it still has a level of ease when maneuvering through tight spaces, etc., and that's a good feeling.
The high-speed stability is quite good, and at city speeds, the Atto 3 feels as good as the other premium IC cars in this price bracket, and that's saying something. The single motor configuration provides brisk performance, and you don't really miss an all-wheel drive or a twin motor setup on this urban crossover.
Now, for those of you who are in the mood for sporty driving, there are the sporty modes as well. I use the word modes because, well, you have multiple. So, for example, the mode switch here on the center console will only make changes to the way the powertrain behaves. So you have Eco, which is sort of a dull response as you would expect. Then you have the normal, which is ideally suited for city and highway runs. and then you have the sport mode, which makes it a lot more eager. But this will only make changes to the powertrain response. But if you want the steering to way up, there is a comfort and a sport mode to choose from on the screen. Similarly, if you want the brakes to be a bit more bitey, again there's a comfort and a sport mode for the brake as well, and that alters the brake pedal feel. Now, usually with electric cars, you get paddle shifters behind the wheel which let you alter different levels of regen, and usually there are at least 3 levels of regen that you can play with or choose from. Here, however, you have one switch on the tunnel console, and that will only let you cycle between 2 modes, standard and high. Now, standard is as natural as it can get, but it still doesn't give you a strong enough regen, especially for the kind of speeds that an electric car can deceptively get onto. So you are still resorting a lot more to the brake pedal every now and then. And on the high, well, it's a bit too jerky. Whether you're driving in the city or on the highway, that high regenerative braking is a bit too jerky. It's a bit too strong for my liking. So I think they should have done an in-between there. So I think I would have still liked to see 3 modes, maybe a normal, a medium and a high instead of a standard and a high. But yeah, just 2 modes are not working for me. I want that in between here.
The ride quality is supple as long as the road is smooth, which was the case on Chennai's ECR. It tackles ruts and joints pretty well too, but thuds through potholes, though not as harshly as the MG ZS EV, the other EV of Chinese origin that the Atto 3 surpasses on specs, space and size. In fact, the overall comfort of this BYD is quite good, and the seats also play a big role to that effect.
So this is a card that unlocks the car. It's NFC enabled. So all you need to do is tap it on the outside rear view mirror and it unlocks. Now the good part, if I have it in my wallet and if it's a RFID enabled wallet or RFID protected wallet, it will not lock. You will need to take it out, tap it here again, and it locks. Of course, there are concerns over it. There are concerns over security maybe. There are concerns that in a place like India, what if someone knocks off your entire mirror? What do you do? Well, there is still the old school way, the key. Can you imagine? You're already saying old school to keyless entry and go. So the door closes with a reassuring thud. That's a good thing. It also feels nice and heavy, nicely built. In fact, everything inside this cabin feels very well put together. There's a nice tactile feel to the switches. All the materials feel nice. The stitching feels good. The shut lines are actually quite nice as well. Now, if you look at the design, of course, that's the first thing you're going to notice when you get inside this cabin. It just doesn't mimic whatever you see on the outside. It's not conventional. It doesn't have the conventional lines. It isn't boring either. It has a nice, happy, young vibe to it, and I quite like it. I'll not necessarily call it sporty. Now, BYD say that the cabin has been inspired by gyms and by muscles, etc. Maybe that's the reason why all this rib defect that you see here, it sort of looks like a skeletal muscle diagram. That's what it looks like to me. Let me know what your thoughts are. Also, that roundish theme is in there. There's a bit of music inspiration as well. If you especially look at the doors, you have the round speaker and then 3 strings flowing from it. Looks like they're trying to make something like a guitar there in terms of the shapes. And also these AC vents that you see right here, well, they are inspired by dumbbells is what BYD says. Whatever the inspirations are, cancel.
What kind of place are you looking for?
Cancel. So she keeps interrupting every now and then because the magic word is build your dreams, right? So you can ask her to roll down the windows, open the sunroof, but what she cannot do is start recording the dash cam automatically. So yes, there is a dash cam and you can record it, but it's all manual. You have to go into the settings and you have to start recording stuff manually. So just swipe in, you see the different tools. Now you go into driving recorder and you can start recording whatever you see. Of course, it doesn't look too good in this vertical format, so there's another party trick. You can turn the screen around. So the dash cam can be recorded. It has a 64 GB internal memory. You will have to manually delete the files or recover them, whatever you need. So there is no SD card at the moment. There is an SD card slot. You can also put a USB stick in there and recover all those files. So you can do all of that, but it will not do anything automatically. Everything is manual. You have to take control of all of this. Now, as far as the screen goes, if you leave it in its vertical orientation, it doesn't really obstruct vision. In fact, the upper edge of the screen is exactly in line with the rim of the lower rim of the windscreen. So it doesn't obstruct your vision in any way. But what does obstruct your vision a little bit are the big headrests that you see at the back, especially when looking through the rear view mirror. The aperture for the rear view is a bit small, but that's me nitpicking. Anyway, coming back to the screen, there are a few other functions that I need to show you. Continuing with the cameras, so when you go into vehicle image, you have a 3D view and it's pretty detailed. In fact, if I were to turn blinkers on right now, even that shows. So it's quite detailed and it's pretty quick. What I also like is the underbody camera. So here with this view, you can get an underbody camera. You can see the car going transparent. So when you're on the move, it's essentially using the feed from the front and the rear cameras to show you what's underneath the car. So maybe if you are driving off the road, or if you're trying to avoid some sort of a hurdle, or trying to avoid maybe a stone or something that's lying on the ground, this is a very good view. So I think it's a very good tool. What it will not show you, however, because this only works when it's on the move, is maybe animals, cats, dogs that are hiding under your car when you're parked. It's not going to show you all that because it needs to be on the move to capture the data and then stitch the image for you. So still kicking the wheels or kicking the rocker panels to ensure that no animals are hiding underneath is still a better idea. But I quite like this tool. I think it's a good tool to have. There's another feature I want to draw your attention to, because electric vehicles are so spookishly quiet. There's one more feature in here. I don't know why it's listed under ambient lighting, but you can also see a music rhythm. So when I'm on the move, are you hearing that? In fact, it lets you choose from 4 different themes: sea of stars, tropical, colorful, etc. When you're on the move and you want that relaxing sound. And you can only hear it at slower speeds. As the speeds rise, it automatically fades out. Let me know what you think about it. I quite like these locks that they've used. That's in the front and in the rear. That reassuring thud is at the back as well. Now, in terms of the visibility here, because the seat is so tall, you don't really get a very good visibility in the front, but you do get a lot of light filling into the cabin thanks to the large glass house, the big panoramic roof, which extends all the way to the back. So in terms of the roomy feeling, not a problem at all. I quite like the seats as well. The bolstering of the front seats is quite good. The seating comfort is quite good. And because they sit a little tall, the foot space at the back is actually quite nice. Also, the seat is set to my driving preference. And just look at the kind of knee room that I have. It's huge. The headroom is actually quite good too. Even someone who is 6 foot tall will not have a problem at all. As for the seat upholstery, you can see there's a big pocket here for maybe magazines. I hope you're still reading those. And then you have these 2 small pockets for your phone or maybe your phablet if you're still using one. As far as the seating comfort for the rear seat goes, I think the bolstering or the seat scorps could have been better. The underthigh support could have been better, especially since you can nicely stretch out your legs. But the overall cushioning, the bolstering is much better for the seat back. It holds you nicely in place. It feels quite comfortable. And I also like the size of the headrests. So it's quite a relaxing place back here. In fact, we've driven for almost 100 kilometers today. Part of it was in the rear seat as well. And I actually like the overall comfort. Even the suspension comfort in the rear feels quite nice, especially on the smooth highways that we've been driving on right now. And you get 3 headrests. So even seating 3 people back here shouldn't be a problem in terms of safety. Also, it's a wide seat, it's a flat floor. So 3 adults at the back is not going to be a problem at all. You also get ISOFIX child seat mounts. Interestingly, you get an ISOFIX child seat mount even for the front passenger seat. So if you want to carry your child in the front, that is possible too.
cabin is secured by 7 airbags, and the list of safety features is quite exhaustive too. The Atto 3 also has a 5-star Euro NCAP rating for a car that is spec similar to ours, which means we get the ADAS safety functions too.
That's an exhaustive list of ADAS features, though they don't feel as well-tuned as the XEV700 or the Hyundai Tucson. Like for example, whenever I'm in the right lane to overtake, or if I am forced to be in the right lane here on the ECR, despite the clear lane markings, it's wanting to stay a little too close to the divider. It's not really staying in the center of the lane. So it's not very fine-tuned, and when the lane markings are not very clear, it does get confused quite often. Also, the lane keep assistance that it has, where it pulls you back into the lane, it's a bit too violent for my liking. It ought to have been a little smoother. So that is something that I would like to be altered, to be made smoother. You also get a blind spot assistance. So now there is, of course, that LED in the wing mirror to tell you where it blinks and tells you that there is something in your blind spot. But apart from that, there is a whole list of features in the blind spot. So for example, there is a door open warning, right? So when you're opening the door, if there is something in your blind spot, it will immediately tell you that you might want to just wait and see what's in your blind spot. Similarly, there's a rear collision warning as well. There is a rear traffic crossing alert as well, and all of this is sort of a part of the blind spot assistance suite, and all of it works quite well.
While I was busy evaluating all the features and the driving dynamics, my colleague Tuhin went off to Pondicherry, had a pani chocola, and put 320 kilometers on the Atto 3 with around 25% state of charge still left in the 60 kWh battery pack. His driving included a mix of highways and Chennai city traffic as well, and an isolated calculation of both these stints hints that a 450 km real-world range is easily achievable. That's an exceptionally good number for a car that looks like a hatchback but is almost the same size of the Hyundai Creta. In fact, it is the largest EV under 40 lakh rupees at the moment. The pinched roofline and the sharp nose are the ones responsible for that hatchbackish silhouette, but they give the car an excellent aerodynamic profile that contributes to that long range. As you would expect then, the BYD is packed to the gills with features, and while all apprehensions about their reliability are justified, it looks like this car will withstand the test of time. To that effect, the Atto 3 also follows the trend of offering an 8-year warranty on the battery. But would that be enough to convince people to spend close to 40 lakh rupees? Maybe not. But the features and the good-looking design, coupled with a long range, should work in the BYD's favor. And the 1500 pre-orders that they've had at launch makes for a good start.